Hello everyone, this is Kenneth Marks of The Ancestor Hunt. Thank you so much for joining me for this webinar intended to help you become an awesome historic newspaper researcher. This webinar will be presenting lots of information to give you tools and techniques to improve your skills and find more articles about your ancestors. We'll be doing some demonstrations as well as a bit of talking, and hopefully at the end of this webinar you will have some techniques that will help you find more stories as well as names, dates, and relationships to enhance your existing family tree. So let's get started and take a look at why we even search newspapers in the first place. Old newspapers certainly can provide you with new names for your tree. This is often evidenced in obituaries where the name of the deceased is usually included with their spouse's name, their children's names, sometimes the names of their brothers and sisters, even cousins and children and grandchildren. So certainly those are ripe for finding new names for your tree. An example in my own recent experience is the brother of my great-great-grandfather. His name was Emil. He was hit by a train in the 1880s, and in his obituary it named his brother, who is again my great-great-grandfather. It named a sister who I knew about, but it named a new sister that I had never heard of before. And the reason I hadn't is she did not show up in a census, and because she got married in between the taking of the census, I did not know her married name. And as a result of finding her name and doing some additional research, I found some third and fourth cousins who I was able to connect with and find even more information about my great-great-grandfather. So names are certainly a great way to make newspapers help you with your genealogy research. Dates and relationships are also often ripe to be found in newspapers. As I said, they certainly can be found in obituaries, but also in wedding announcements. If the bridesmaid and the groomsmen were named, they often were cited as brothers, sisters, cousins, or whatever of the bride and groom. And again, it may turn up those relationships are information that you never had before. But for me, the best of all is the stories of your ancestors' lives. If you do not have living relatives who can provide you with information about these stories, where else are you going to find them? In old newspapers. And there are lots and lots of examples of the types of information that can be found in these newspapers that enlighten you about the depth and stories of your ancestors' lives. Again, not just obituaries. Here's an example of an obituary, a short one, from someone in my tree, Albert Clay Williams, who died in 1898. It lists the name of his parents, the names of his brothers and sisters, and also the date of his passing, actually his age, as well as at the bottom where he was buried. So that's good information, no question. But there is lots of other stuff that you can find. If your ancestor was involved in a crime, either as a perpetrator or the victim, it oftentimes can be found in articles in the old newspapers. Max Bernstein on the left was a victim of a gunshot wound from someone who was unhappy with a business dealing that he was involved with. In the middle, I had an ancestor, Hattie Isaacs, who was pregnant and betrothed to Mr. Permian, and he backed out. So she sued him for betrayal in 1899, I believe it was, and it was also a possible felony conviction for him. So I have about 10 or 12 articles regarding that whole list of court proceedings. That is quite interesting. And on the right, here is another example of an ancestor who was involved in a possible forgery. So whether it be a victim or a perpetrator, crime information can be found in ancestors' newspapers, articles. Sports and games. Did they get involved in games or sports such as golf or baseball? Or in the middle, we've got one who was involved in a bridge game. On the left you see the baseball scorecard for Peabody Motors against Aladdin Heating, and the second one on the left is Mark's. That's my father's name. He was 2 for 4 in that game, and that was pretty good. In the middle, again, another ancestor who's involved in a bridge tournament, and on the right, Alva Freed, who is another one of my ancestors, shot a hole-in-one. I did not know she played golf. Her living relatives were not aware of the fact that she indeed had shot a hole-in-one. So this is interesting information about Alva. And as I said, sports and games are also good information to bring you more information about your ancestors. Weddings and anniversary celebrations are a mainstay in old newspaper articles. On the left, I've got a relative who, actually my great-grandfather, who celebrated his 50th anniversary. In the middle, another one, my great-great-great-grandfather, who was married for 65 years and celebrated that event in 1901. This article was in the Atlanta Constitution. Since my great-great-great-grandfather was fairly well known and still lived in Germany, it was posted in that newspaper. And on the right, here is an article about an upcoming wedding. So, weddings and anniversary celebrations, just another example. A third one is advertisements. On the left is Bronhardt's tropical sauce. Mr. Bronhardt is an ancestor of mine who created a tropical sauce that was sold for about 15 years, and it was indeed a winner at the state fair. So this was interesting about this particular ancestor and some of the endeavors that he was involved with. On the right is my great-grandfather, who was in an advertisement for an elixir for stomach troubles in 1917. Unfortunately, he died in 1919 of stomach troubles, so this particular remedy did not work very well. And lastly, again, this is not all you can find, but this is just another great example. My grandmother, Celia Hyman, had moved from Brooklyn, New York to Oakland, California in 1910 and was looking for a job. She had excellent typing skills. As it says here, she was experienced, rapid, and accurate, and she was looking for a job in 1910 in Oakland, California, where she had moved to. So these are just a few of the examples why you might want to consider searching old newspapers and finding interesting stuff about your ancestors. But why is newspaper research such a challenge? Well, there's several reasons, and I'll list them and go in more detail a little bit later. First is the quality of the original material. Some of these newspapers are 150 or 200 years old, and certainly the ravages of time have impacted their ability to maintain their original quality. And printing capabilities were not the way they are today, so there are maladies in the particular old newspapers that cannot be overcome by scanning techniques. The quality of the scan. Is the scan from an original newsprint, or was it scanned and copied to microfilm and then gone through the OCR process, or was it a copy of a microfilm? Each time it gets copied, it is degraded. So when scanning and applying the OCR process, it makes it more and more difficult to convert all those little dots to letters that we can digitally understand. Third is the quality of the OCR software and the process. OCR stands for Optical Character Recognition, and that in fact is the way that all those dots are converted to letters and symbols. The process is all over the place in terms of its capability. Some are quite good and some are not as good. We'll go into more about that later. The quality of the writing and the typesetting. Did the original author of the article, did they get the name spelled correctly? Did they insert some of their own facts? Did they change the facts? In the type that was set many decades ago, were some of the type broken? It was not as electronic as it is now. It was manual, and some of the type broke or degraded over time, and that certainly is going to impact the newsprint as it is created back then and then digitally converted these days. And last, and the bulk of the story here today in this webinar, is the knowledge and skill of the researcher, and that is the key thing that we want to focus on, because you can overcome some of these negative things, such as the quality of the material, scan, OCR process, writing, and typesetting, by the techniques that you use. So the goal of this webinar is to get you the knowledge, the tools, and the techniques to overcome the challenges that we mentioned, and to help you find the optimal results. Find more dates, find more names, find more relationships, and certainly find the stories all about your ancestors. Let's revisit the challenges that we mentioned and discuss the quality of the original material. Again, some of these are 150 or 200 years old. Was the original material yellow or brittle, falling apart? You'll notice in some scans of digitized material that they almost look like a moth ate some of it. So that is certainly going to impact the quality of the digitization later on. There could be ink spots, creases, folds, things of that nature, mars to the original newsprint that make digitization pretty darn difficult. We mentioned typesetting earlier. There could have been broken type or worn out type that make a letter D look like something else, or something totally unrecognizable. And finally, there are font variations. There were different fonts early on. For example, you may have seen things that look like an F or an integral sign that represent double S's or things of that nature. So they did change over time, some of the way that fonts were done and some of the way the letters were printed. That is certainly going to impact how it gets digitized later. The quality of the scan. Was it from original or microfilm? Was it a second, third, or fourth generation copy? Some of the digitized sites that I've seen and their databases have third or fourth generation copies. So it was originally scanned from newsprint, copied to microfilm, then copies of microfilm were made, and then copies again. Every time it gets copied, it degrades even further. So the scan quality is very, very important. The OCR process, optical character recognition, there's a variety of different processes, a variety of different pieces of software. Was it done in single pass or multi-pass? Well, let's talk about that. If you do a single pass, that takes the scanned item, applies the OCR software, and from that it determines what the letters are going to be on the page. Well, if it's done once, there's nothing to compare it against. If it's multi-pass, let's say it's done twice, then you apply the process twice. And if there are anomalies between pass 1 and pass 2, what do you do about that? If you do a third pass, do you take the best 2 out of 3? That is certainly a consideration. In very recent online sites, we now have the ability to do crowdsourcing, where if you find a page and you find the digitized representation, you have the ability, if registered on the site, to actually correct the digitized version. So if the word crowdsourcing doesn't come out when it's scanned to be exactly CROWDSOURCING, there may be an O in there 2 or 3 times or 4 times. The C could have become an E, the N could be an M. You have the ability to actually correct the digitized text, and most people are pretty honorable and trustworthy, and when they do it right. That can certainly enhance the ability of the digitized representation to be better over time. I've done some of it myself on one site, and I've seen many others who take an interest in making it better for the next person, paying it forward, as it were. Quality of the writing and typesetting. We talked a little bit about that before, but the biggest single problem is the names of the people on the page. Did they spell it right? Did they assume when they heard the name from someone that it's spelled a certain way? In the 1800s and early 1900s, when there were a lot of immigrants in the United States and English wasn't their primary language and it wasn't a common language in their community, the author may not have spelled their name properly. So that is a big deal, and that certainly one that will alter what the digitized representation should be versus what it is. We talked about the typesetting. Did they get the words right? Did they spell it right from what the author represented? Again, did they get it right? They could have made changes. They said, oh, well, the author didn't spell this right. I'm going to spell it the way I think it should be. That's a no-no for typesetters, but they may have done that. And lastly, was hyphenation done properly? Many times in multisyllabic words, you use hyphenation, especially in the older days when we had only fixed size type. Hyphenation was much more utilized than it is today. And did they do it right? Did they hyphenate at the actual syllable break? These are all considerations, again, that will impact the quality of the digitized output. And so, that is what this webinar is all about. And I will discuss here what each of them actually are, what the tools and techniques are that we're going to show you and discuss, and then we'll go ahead and do some demonstrations. Let's quickly go through the list. Always use advanced search. We'll talk about that later. There's a reason for that. Simple search and advanced search is always available in almost all of the sites. Simple search is you just put in a term such as a name, a surname for example, and fire away. Advanced search allows you to restrict by date, by language, and a bunch of other things that we'll show you. Secondly, we're going to show you how to misspell on purpose, how to spell names and other words on purpose wrong, because that will enhance your results, and you shall see that when we do the demonstration. Again, you want to use hyphenated words properly. There are ways to use hyphenated words, again, that will help you find more results. How to use browse and jump. When you browse from one page to another within an issue of a newspaper, and how do you use the knowledge that you gain from that browsing in jumping to the next issue and the issue after that. We will discuss that in more detail. And lastly, how to use abbreviations. Abbreviations were used quite a bit in older newspapers, especially for given names, and we'll discuss that as well. So, that is what we're going to talk about. That is what you're going to learn. And here we go in a few minutes with some demonstrations about each of these one at a time and how you can incorporate these into your search techniques. The first skill or tip that I want to share with you is always use the advanced search capability. Almost every online site has what I will call a simple search and also an advanced search capability. The advanced search option provides you with a number of different features that allow you to home in on specific search criteria. I'm going to be demoing two different sites. One is the California Digital Newspaper Collection, and the second site is Chronicling America, the site from the Library of Congress, just to give you a view at a couple of different ways that the advanced search capability is developed and made available to you. So let's take a look at these sites and show you what you can do beyond doing just a simple search. The California Digital Newspaper Collection has a great number of newspapers from 1846 to the present. Most of them are older newspapers, and as you can see right here in the middle, this is what I would call the simple search capability, where you can enter a name, for example, or you can put it in quotes if you know the person's full name. George Smith, for example, as you can see, and that is your simple search capability. It doesn't allow you any further options than that. But if you want to use the advanced search option, we need to go to search here on the tab there, and as you can see, it brings up advanced search. And let's go through what these options are on this particular online site. Again, your search criteria goes in this box. You've got the ability to enter a date range. You can enter a year or a day, month, and year in the from area, and also in the to area. So if I wanted to search, for example, from 1846 to 1852, I could do that. Or I could actually put a specific day and month in if I wish to. I can also, in this particular site, I can also select just one or many by holding down the control key, different newspapers, rather than searching all of them that are available in the collection. So that's a nice option. So let's try one and see how we can narrow it down. First, we're going to clear the search so we start fresh, and let's just try one here. Samuel Bronhardt is a person in my tree, and let's just do a search with just his name with no quotes around. Oops, let's make sure we spell it right. Around the name and see what it comes up. As you can see, there are 318 results. So let's go back, clear the search, and let's put quotes around his name. And see how that varies. So instead of 308, now we get 245. What that means is, in the 308 case, the words Samuel and the words Bronhardt were found on that particular page, but the term itself, Samuel Bronhardt, as you can see here, Samuel Bronhardt, Samuel Bronhardt, Samuel Bronhardt, all highlighted in yellow, those are the ones that have his exact name. Now I can also search within full text, article headlines, comments, or tags. So let's just try his name in headlines and see what happens. And we enter his name, and let's go to searching in article headlines and see what happens here. As you can see, here's the headline, which is the first line, and the second line is the name of the newspaper and the date it was published. As you can see, these are all headlines for articles that include the word Bronhardt. So those might be something that he may not be mentioned in, but there might be more details about him in this complete article. So let's clear search again, and let's just pick from, say, 1846 to 1900. Again, using the same name, Bronhardt. And as you can see, there are 963 results, and that is just for those years. And let's just, for fun, let's see, from 1901 to 1906, which is the year he died. He died right after the earthquake in April of 1906. He had a heart attack on the day of the earthquake, so he was a victim of the earthquake. And let's do search in full text. So rather than 900, there are 500 in the years 1901 to 1906. Excuse me, 1905. I entered it wrong, but you get the idea. So you can narrow it from a date range. You can limit it to headlines. You can search and show images, and let's just show you how that works. And it shows, here you see a sample of the image on where the term highlighted in yellow is found in the article. That's kind of handy if you're searching for a specific type of article. You can also select the number of results to show per page, 10, 20, or 50. 20 seems to be the right amount for me anyway. But you've got the option to do it any way you like, and that is how the advanced search works in the California Digital Newspaper Collection. So let's go to the search, and now let's go to Chronicling America. Again, here's the box for simple search. It does give you the ability to select a state and a date range here with the simple search if you choose to. And let's use my friend Bronhardt again and see how he comes up in Chronicling America. And as you can see, there are 1,292 of them. In Chronicling America, it highlights in red everywhere that term is found. So as you can see in this one right here, the first one, it obviously is one that is pretty much about him in the whole article, because there's a lot of red. And as you go down, it's sorted by relevance. So as you go down, the amount of red diminishes. And also in Chronicling America, you have the ability to sort by relevance, state, title, or date if you choose to. So we're not doing a webinar on Chronicling America. I just want to show you how the advanced search works. So let's go to advanced search. And in advanced search, you've got the ability to limit the search to specific states or specific newspapers. You've got the ability to do a date range by year, which is very similar to the California Digital Newspaper Collection, which we showed earlier. Or you can put in a specific date range. For example, you can actually pick a specific date within that year. And let's say you just wanted to look at January 1st, 1836 to, say, December 1st, 1903, and you can do that. And you've got the option to limit a search to only front pages or specific pages. You can say, okay, I just want to see articles that are on page 1, for example, or page 15, whatever. And you've got the ability to also limit the search to different languages, only English articles, French, Spanish, or German. So that's pretty handy. And let's clear this right now so we're not doing a search that's going to end up with nothing. You can search by entering any of the words. And just for fun, let's show how these different advanced search capabilities work. Search for Samuel Bronhardt, where Samuel or Bronhardt is found on any of the pages, and you can see there's over 1 million results, so that's not going to be very handy to us. And let's go and let's say all of the words. Again, let's try that and see what that comes up with. And here we've got 473, so obviously this is a little better representation. It's Samuel and Bronhardt if you're interested in Boolean ands. And let's just do with the phrase Samuel Bronhardt. And that should be pretty similar. That's similar to putting quotes around the term. And we've got 209. So you can see as you move from any of the words, all of the words, to a specific phrase, it narrows in on more specific results. You can have what's called a proximity search. For example, Bronhardt, you would enter, so I'll clear that for now. You can put in 2 words and it'll search for those 2 words within a certain number of words from each other. For example, 5 words, 10 words, 50 words, etc. So let's try just for fun and see how this comes out. Samuel. In fact, let's do it a little different. Let's use his nickname, Sammy, and Bronhardt, and within 5 words of one another, and let's see how that comes out. And there are 55. And let's try it within 10 words of one another, and that should probably be pretty similar, but let's try it anyway. And let's do it within 50 words of one another, see how that works out. And there are a few more results. Instead of 50 some odd, there are 60. So you can see how advanced search works in these 2 sites. Other sites have even more capabilities. I won't go into showing you all of those, but the moral of the story is always use advanced search. It allows you to home in on specific terms that you're interested in for specific dates, specific languages, certain pages if you only want the front page, for example. And again, you can do with Chronicling America any of the words, all of the words, or with a specific phrase. And in this one, it provides you with proximity search, which is very, very handy. So let's clear all this and go back to the start of Chronicling America. And let's go back and go to our next skill. And that is, I want you to learn how to misspell on purpose. This is not like grammar school where they wanted you to spell things properly all the time. If you want to find more results, you want to spell things on purpose wrong. And let me tell you why. See these word pairs here that are listed? Oftentimes through the scanning and OCR process, similar looking letters can be interpreted as something different. For example, this is R, small r, and small n. See how similar that is to just the single letter M. Sometimes an RN can be interpreted as an M and vice versa. H and a B. Just by merely closing off the H at the bottom, an H can now become a B. The same is true. Oops. I went to the next slide. Sorry about that. Capital D and O. Also letter I, small l, number 1, slash, exclamation point, etc. are often interchanged. A 0 and a capital O. A C and an E. See, an E is very much the same as a C, except it's got a little line in it. And an R and an N, where an R, if you close the rest of it, it's going to come out to be an N. So, these are the word pairs that are oftentimes confused. It's not a limitation necessarily of the scanning or OCR process. It's just that because of the quality of the original material that is interpreted by the OCR process, you can mix up these letters. So let's go to some examples and see how that works out. Well, again, we'll use our same set of sites, California Digital Newspaper Collection and Chronicling America. And we're going to use the same name here. Let's do Bronhardt just by itself with no date range, etc., and see what happens. As you can see, there's 1,507 results. Okay, well, sometimes his name was spelled a little differently. It's not the way he spelled it, but people interpreted his spelling that way because other folks had the same last name, only it was spelled differently. Let's search for Bronhardt with a D, and you can see there's an additional 26 results. So you want to deliberately misspell that way. Let's look at Bronbart. Let's say the H comes out to be like a B. And as you can see Bronbart, there's another 96 results. So that's, what is that, 5-10% more? Just by deliberately misspelling the last name. So that is very handy. There's Bronhardt is also spelled Brownhardt, or at least people thought it should be spelled that way, and let's see how that comes out. And we've got another 16 results. Same person, Brownhardt, Samuel Brownhardt, but again it was misspelled improperly by the original author, or it was typeset improperly. This is not an OCR or scanning issue. It's just the way the original person wrote his name. So you definitely want to use all kinds of different spellings of last names, because the scanning and OCR process, as well as the original author, may not have written it right, may not have spelled it right, or in the digitization process, it may not have been interpreted correctly. Let's try a more common name. Let's try a real common name, Smith. And see what happens here. Now, there's 531,000 results for Smith, which one would expect since it's a pretty common name. Let's try misspelling it a little bit. S-M small l th. Again, the small l can oftentimes be confused with the small I, and let's see what happens. As you can see, there's another 702 results. Interesting, isn't it? So let's try another example, SM exclamation point th, and see what happens here. 1,761 results. And how it gets interpreted, as you can see in the yellow here, SMTH, SM asterisk TH, SMTH, SM exclamation point th. Again, SMTH, SMTH, etc. And here's S period MTH. So you definitely want to misspell the names and other words so that you can get the optimal number of results. I have seen anywhere from 10 to 25% increase in these results as a result of deliberately misspelling. So you definitely want to do that. I would highly recommend it. Here's just some of the word pairs that I've got. There are more word pairs in articles on my website, theancestorhunt.com. So take a look at that, and you'll find more word pairs that are oftentimes confused. But again, in summary, misspell on purpose. This isn't grammar school. You aren't going to get an F if you put in a name with the improper misspelling or a word. So take a look at that, and that will be a skill probably more so than anything that we're talking about today that will allow you to get much more results than you normally would if you just spell it the way it is spelled today. The next skill is hyphenation. In the old days, hyphens were used a lot more than they are today because they primarily had fixed size type. So if you anticipate where hyphens could be utilized in multisyllabic names or words, you can get even more results. So let's show you some examples of how using hyphens will get you more than the typical results that we have talked about earlier. So let's try the Chronicling America site, and we're going to make use of the advanced search capability, and what we're going to do is use their proximity search because this is helpful, and we're going to type in our old friend Mr. Braunhart, B-R-A-U-N space H-A-R-T. We're going to use that within 5 words of one another because that's the way it will look. It'll look like one word is Braun and the second word is Hart, but you'll see in the results that there is a hyphen. So let's do a search, and you can see there's 278 results with those 2 words in the search criteria. And let's go to the third one here, and there's the result in red. Can't see it, so let's going to zoom in a little bit and zoom in a little bit more, and lo and behold, there's Braun, B-R-A-U-N hyphen H-A-R-T. It's that simple. So using the proximity search within Chronicling America will lead you to the results that you want when a word is hyphenated. So let's go back to our advanced search and clear everything, and let's try this same technique in the California Digital Collection. Now they do not have a proximity search, so what we're going to do is we're going to type in those 2 words separated by a space, and let's see what happens. And as you can see, here's a result for Judge Hart. That's not who we want. Hart and Braun are in the same area here. And let's go to this advertisement, and it looks like there might be a hyphen here. And there's the advertisement, and the search criteria is highlighted in yellow, but let's blow that up a little bit so you can actually see it. It would be handy. And there we go. Let's move to the center, and you can see B-R-A-U-N hyphen H-A-R-T. So there's an example of separating by a space in the California Digital Newspaper Collection, Braun hyphen Hart. And let's see if there's another one here. I think there might be. And let's see here, Senator Braunhart, same concept. You can see the hyphen in that result. And let's go to the highlighted article. Let's zoom in a bit. One more time. And there it is, B-R-A-U-N hyphen H-A-R-T. And I've got apostrophe S, but that's okay. So there's an example where using a hyphen, anticipating where it would be, would lead you to additional results. Let's go back to our search. One more time, and let's clear the search. And let's say there's a name like Jorgensen, J-O-R-G-E-N, and let's just try Jorgen by itself and see what happens. See if there's anything that looks like it might be hyphenated. This one was not. Let's scroll down a little bit. Most of these are not. And it doesn't. Oh, there's one that looks like it might be. See the hyphen here at the end of the yellow? Let's look at that particular article. And let's zoom in on that one. And there it is, Jorgen hyphen, in this case G-E-N, Jorgen. I don't know if that's a real name or not, but it certainly is interesting. It could have been S-E-N, it could have been S-O-N, it could have been G-E-N. And engaged to Ghirardelli, the chocolate manufacturer. Everybody knows Ghirardelli's name. So this is an example of using Jorgen, just one word, and seeing what happens. And let's try clearing the search again, and let's try Jorgen space S-E-N. See what happens here. Here's one right here, the second article listed in the search results. And here's the article. Let's zoom in. And there it is, Jorgen hyphen S-E-N. And this looks like it's a bit of an obituary about Henry Jorgensen. So if your ancestor's name is Jorgensen, this is a good way to look for it. Jorgen space S-E-N instead of combining it into one. And let's try clearing the search. And I have tried this, so let's see what happens. And let's try Jorgen S-O-N and see what happens. And let's see if we get any results there. And here's a hyphen right in the first one. Here we go. Let's center that article. And let's zoom in a bit. And there we go, Tilly Jorgensen, S-O-N. So, let's go back to our search. And the fact of the matter is, by splitting the word into two, if it's Jorgensen, S-O-N, Jorgensen, S-E-N, or just entering Jorgen, J-O-R-G-E-N, you're going to get more results, and it will anticipate where the hyphen might have been in the actual search. And this is another way to get even more results than you would by just entering the name as you think it is currently spelled. So let's clear that search, and let's go back to our slides, and let's go to our next slide. In this one I'm not going to demonstrate it to you, but I just want to make you aware of it. It's called browse and jump. One of the techniques that I have used starting a couple years ago when I figured it out was, it was in the Oakland Tribune newspaper actually, and new obituaries were always on, let's say, for example, page 17. So if I was looking for a person's obituary and I knew their death date, let's say it was January 28th, 1911, for example, the obituary may in fact have been in the afternoon or evening edition of January 28th, 1911, but it may be on January 29th or January 30th or maybe even a week later. Rather than doing a search by name and knowing that the obituaries were always on page 17, I would use the browse capability of the website, and what I would do then is I would go to the first issue on page 17, then I'd go to the next issue on January 28th or 29th, whatever the next one was, and I would go directly to page 17, which is where the obituaries were. And if it wasn't there, I'd go to the next date, and then the next date, maybe going out a week or at most 2 weeks. It's a little bit faster way to actually find things that you know are always or generally on the same page. So this is especially true for vital statistics sections of the newspaper where births, marriages, divorces, and deaths are often found. So I would definitely incorporate this particular capability into your search technique. It's actually a browse technique, and this will enable you to get even more results and find them a little bit faster. Especially helpful for obituaries, which are not always published on the date or the following date of a person's death. Just a little technique that I think will help you find something that is generally on the same page from issue to issue. Our next skill is to use abbreviations. Some examples of how abbreviations can be used to get you even more search results is for first names. For example, WM for William, GEO for George, JNO is often used for John. And for other types of abbreviations, NYC for New York City. So let's take a look at some examples of how this might give us many more search results, and you will be surprised at how many you do indeed get. So let's go to our California digital newspaper collection, and let's type in George Smith in quotes, and let's see how many results we get. As you can see, there's 2,903. There's George Smith highlighted in yellow. And so there's almost 3,000 results just for that name. Let's try incorporating just the abbreviation for George, which is GEO. And let's do that search. And lo and behold, that's almost another 2,000 results using the abbreviation. So if you're not using abbreviations for first names, you certainly should incorporate it as soon as possible, because it's going to give you a heck of a lot more results. And let's try another one. Let's try William Jones, another common name. Oops, let's put a space between the first and last name and hit search. And as you can see, there are 1,700 results. There's Mrs. William Jones, etc. Let's incorporate the abbreviation for William, which is WM, and see what happens. So we had 1,708 with the full name, another 500 some odd, not as big of a percentage as for the previous search with George Smith, but still quite a lot more, another 25-30%. There's WM Jones, etc. So you certainly want to incorporate abbreviations, especially for first names, and you will be surprised at how many more results that you get. So let's clear this. And let's try our example of a place name, and let's put in New York City. And let's put quotes around it. And this is the California collection, so it's not for the state of New York, but let's see what we get in California in this newspaper collection. And as you can see, there's, wow, 63,000 results. So let's try NYC, common abbreviation for New York City. We're not going to use the Big Apple. We'll use NYC, and there's another 1,900 results. Now these are not just abbreviations. Here you see Mark NYC. I suspect that's probably supposed to be Mark Nye NYE. And here we see, oh, there's an NYC right there. Let's look at this one. And let's center that article. Zoom in. And as you can see, there's NYC. Now it does have New York City in the article, so we probably would have found it anyway. But there's an example of how using an abbreviation such as NYC can give you more results. And let's see if there's another one here. There's Rochester NY, and there's a C afterwards. That's probably erroneous. But as you can see, there's another NYC here, NYC, etc., etc. So you are going to want to incorporate abbreviations into your search criteria. I guarantee you that's going to give you a lot more, especially in the case of the situation where you've got first names that are abbreviated WM and GEO. In one of my articles on my website, there is a link to a website that has hundreds of abbreviations for first names, and you certainly are going to want to take advantage of that. So take a look at that, and again, you might want to use it for other things than first names, and you're going to get a lot more search results as we just showed you. So let's go to our next slide. Here's another skill. I'm not going to demonstrate this to you, but years ago, wives were referenced by their husband's name as late as the 50s and 60s of the past century. So if you're looking for Mary Jones as an example, you're probably not going to find her if it's the Mary Jones that you're seeking. in a search. But she may have been married to Wilbert, and she would be known in the newspaper as Mrs. Wilbert Jones, not Mary. So you're going to want to take that into consideration when you're doing your searches, that are looking for married women, that up until recently, right or wrong, the custom was to have them referenced by the name of their husband. Again, not appropriate in this day and age, of course, but it certainly is something that you're going to want to know about if you're looking for Mary Jones prior to the late 20th century. So let's go to our next slide, and that completes our webinar. I would encourage you strongly to try these new skills, and you will become an awesome newspaper researcher, because as you can see, by misspelling, using hyphens, using abbreviations, etc., all of the things that we showed you, you will get more search results, and that is what you're after. You have the ability, using an advanced search, to home in on more appropriate search results. A simple search will not do it for you. So I encourage you to try these out, and I hope they work for you. They work for me for many years now. And if you are interested in more information about searching old newspapers, on the newspapers page, and here's the link, I've got a number of articles, about 50 of them, about different ways to be an effective newspaper researcher. And also there are links to almost 12,000 free newspapers that you can avail yourself of. So I thank you for taking your time out of your busy day to take a look at this webinar, and I hope that you will become much more proficient. And please let me know by email how this has worked for you. I am dedicated to helping people become better newspaper researchers, because that is what really turns me on, so to speak, in the genealogy world, is to search for my stories of my ancestors, names, dates, relationships, etc. And it is a fun and very rewarding activity. Thank you again, and have a great day.